Kia ora, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Citizen A, where we wrap the week's current affairs with the best political team on television from a very, very Auckland perspective. Warning, we're as fair and balanced as Fox News. Joining me tonight on my revolving panel of bloggers and Auckland opinion shapers. She's from the Auckland University Department of Film, TV and Media Studies, one of the best bloggers in New Zealand, Phoebe Fletcher. And she is the Deputy Mayor of the Auckland Super City, friend to the environment and high-ranking Jedi Knight, Penny Holtz. Welcome to you both. Coming up tonight, issue 1. How justifiable is the Sky Casino Conference Centre deal when only 2% of Sky City pokie machines return anything to the community they take from? And what now for the St James? Issue 2. Has the port dispute been resolved? Who are the winners and who are the losers? Issue 3. What is slower, the Privacy Commissioner in finding out about the largest breach of privacy in New Zealand history, or Treasury when working out our budget deficit? And we'll end the show on a final word, but let's kick things off with issue 1. The government seemed to be utterly surprised and caught flat-footed by the sudden furore over rewriting gambling laws so Sky City can add more pokie machines in exchange for a convention centre with all the architectural charm of a road accident. Phoebe, listening to John Key astonishingly defend gambling makes one wonder if he's the political leader of our country or a pimp for Sky City. How smelly is this deal?
Well, there seem to be quite a few pimps for Sky City at the moment.
Don't they just?
Out and about, TVNZ and so on. I think it is smelly, actually, because it's something where the government has really stepped in and are directly doing those negotiations with Sky City. They're saying, well, it was 60 Minutes that said each pokies machine would bring in another 143,000.
That's right.
And so what we've got here is the 170,000 jobs that we were supposed to see being created out of basically gambling.
Yes,
I mean, Sky City is going to bring in 900 jobs during construction and then 900 once it's launched. But surely we've got to have better job creation initiatives than this.
One would hope that the 170,000 new jobs aren't all going to come from the pokey industry, are they?
Well, I think 900 plus 900 is not quite 170,000, but you know, this is one area that I think National have been particularly weak on, is job creation. And there has been a lot of doubt around those figures from when they were initially produced. And I think that there is a problem here where so much of the information is not being released because of its commercial sensitivity, and that there really does need to be more debate around the impact of problem gambling on our society.
Is policy for sale with the national government?
Well, I think there is an element of policy for sale here.
Right. Penny, how utterly ridiculous is it that Len Brown can't have a position on the convention centre? How can the Mayor of Auckland not have a position over the convention centre that's being built on the back of pokie money?
I think just thinking of the jobs that might be created, I think the Problem Gambling Foundation might need to increase the number of positions that it has. But the difficulty with this is simply a deal between Sky City and the government.
But that's ridiculous,
and I must admit, we do find that interesting. Our council's position, and we're just working towards our gambling policy, is hopefully going to be supporting the sinking lid for poker machines. I know that's certainly the Mayor's position and was amongst several of the councils in the Auckland region. Now sadly this has no impact, however, on the Sky City number of pokies, and the community would need to take that up with government if they can see.
Well, that's the really interesting thing, is that John Key is at the moment saying that your sinking lid policy will save problem gambling.
Yes, he's using it. He's using it to actually try and sell this, isn't it?
We find that really interesting. I think John Key might just need to slow down a little bit. We're still going through the process, and it's a little bit disingenuous to use a policy that has yet to be written to justify this decision.
How ridiculous is it to have a convention centre built in Auckland that the council isn't part of the discussion?
I think it's being sold as part of the wider package around economic development and tourism attraction and all the rest of it, and that's quite hooky. You know, we are very keen to see large conventions happen in Auckland, but you know, you raise the issue of the St James often, and we haven't had a chance yet to have that discussion about how this impacts on other buildings that we might like to see utilised or saved.
Phoebe, John states that the Sky City deal is okay because of a sinking lid policy that reduces pokies overall in the Auckland region. Yet those pub charity pokies return 37% back to the community, while Sky City pokies only return 2%, and the extra pokies per year will pay Sky City the entire cost of the convention centre back within half a decade. The only winner here, surely, is Sky City, to the detriment of everyone else in Auckland.
Well, of course it's Sky City, and I think that you need to look at what Sky City's business is primarily. It is gambling, it is not convention centres.
No, no.
And, you know, really they have an interest in generating customers. So at the same time as they do have initiatives to stop problem gamblers getting on the floor, such as cards and banning people and so on, they do have an interest in getting people to spend more money in those machines. And there is a very tiny amount of that that is going back to the community.
Let's be honest, Penny, green lighting this deal ends any possible lifeline to the St James as a convention centre under the old Auckland City Council Aotearoa Centre proposal. If Len wants the world's most livable city, isn't the type of rejuvenation of old buildings like the St James the exact type of urban renewal that the most successful cities are adopting, rather than gambling sheds attached to casinos pawned off as convention centres?
The St James has still got its lifeline, it's got its funding lifeline, and certainly, you know, there's a bunch of passionate people around the council table who don't want to see the St James, you know, just crumble away. It's such an important part of our heritage. But, you know, there's a couple of things going on here. Number one, we do need to provide for, you know, tourists. We do need to provide what Sky City offers, and you know, the reality is people are going to come, it's going to happen, and I'm not just going to slag Sky City off because of that. However, does it need to grow and grow and grow within the city centre? I'm not entirely convinced. Should we be refurbishing some of our beautiful old buildings to utilise for, you know, for public or convention centres? Absolutely. The truth is, this is between government and Sky City, and at the moment we've got our noses pressed against that window and are hoping for a good outcome. So watch that
You've got
space.
your noses pressed against
A lot of windows.
Question to both of you: with a new multi-floored brothel opening across from a newly expanded casino in Auckland, is Auckland Central becoming the country's vice capital, and should that be in the Auckland plan?
Now, I'm not the right person to ask about brothels. My stand on brothels is well known. Prostitution is legal,
of course,
and I don't want to see anything that kind of undermines keeping our women safe. You know, when councils look at resource consents, we look at what the building looks like, the impacts that it generates, and
we have them ripped down and then rebuilt, don't you?
Only, sadly,
because
because that one fell down.
Oh,
now,
it fell down.
I don't know whether I'm going to enter into this debate majorly, because, you know, I think, do councils have the right to make moral judgments on what happens inside buildings? My personal view is no. I don't think that all councillors have that view, but, you know, a 5-storey brothel, if there's a need, I guess there's a need.
Well, should that be part of the Auckland plan, Auckland City advice?
Well, I don't think maybe the Auckland plan, but I think Penny has a very valid point there, which is that the safety of our women must be put first. And if that is stopping people being on the streets, then I think, you know, I would have to align with Penny there, and that I think the safety of the woman is the imperative issue there.
Of course, of
not,
course.
You know, really having a moral panic around that
Multi-storey
building.
brothels.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
perhaps
panel.
it's better in the city rather than pushed to the suburbs.
Thank you, panel. Moving on to issue 2. The first 2 legal battles have been won by the Maritime Union over the Ports of Auckland dispute, but tensions remain and the war is far from over. Who is winning and who is losing at the moment? Penny, Len Brown was elected by appealing to the workers, yet has done very little to protect the workers at the port. Has he been the biggest loser here by being seen to do nothing and rubber stamping this magical 12% return?
And that's exactly what the media have portrayed. Sadly, people have neglected to understand the reality of this, which is that the port company is enshrined in legislation and it stands alone. The council, as shareholder on behalf of the people of Auckland, owns the port company as a shareholder. However, there are 2 very large brick walls between our ability to influence the port company and council. The first is ACIL, which is the company that is our CCO, that we have the ability to influence, and then it's ACIL who has
the contract
with the port company. And so has Len done nothing? I think Len has done everything within his legal power to bring the warring parties around the table, to put some bottom lines in place around his absolute desire and the council's desire to see the collective reached. The only thing that he hasn't done is stride down to the port company and throw his weight around, because to be absolutely blunt, it would look good in the papers, it would appease the media, and it would achieve nothing.
So Len doesn't understand the theatre of politics?
I think Len's a bit more genuine than someone who just utilises the media to make himself look good. He's a lawyer, he understands the process, and to my mind, he's probably done the most difficult thing, which is to remain solidly within the parameters of the law.
I spoke with a lot of those workers on the march, the protest march. Many of them had many bitter things to say to Len. They said that they voted for him, they believed in him, their jobs were on the line and part of a low-wage economy thrust by management. They feel let down by him. Is that something that's just going to have to take on the chin?
We can understand that, and yes, indeed, for those of us whose politics are left-leaning and who in different circumstances would be down on the picket line with those workers, it's probably been about the most difficult month and a half of many of our lives.
Phoebe, is the disappointment many on the left, the way they feel about the lack of leadership from Len in this, do you think that that's their fault for not actually vetting him? Because when he was Mayor of South Auckland, he contracted out many council services as he could. Shouldn't they have known that when he became Mayor of the Super City, he'd do the same thing?
I think he's been hedged here. I mean, I do agree with Penny quite a lot here in terms of, I mean, there was a motion put forward by Richard Northey over whether the council could actually intervene. This motion was denied. It was looked at by the council's legal team, and because of their position in relation to Ports of Auckland, it doesn't actually have the ability to intervene. What I do think has gone on here is that we have, I guess, external politics impacting on the council as well. And that I think Len has had kind of a rough ride with the CCOs being set up, also the Rugby World Cup debacle, and now the Ports of Auckland. And I think that this also suits some of the politics of other people that would like to see him knocked out for the next mayoral race. So, I mean, I can understand the frustration. I think it really does come down to wanting to put his weight behind it, or people wanting him to come out and say something. But unfortunately, I guess where the council is, it's a difficult legal position, and the responsibility really does fall with Ports of Auckland.
Penny, former Regional Council Chairman Mike Lee yesterday accused the Auckland Council Investments Board of getting away with corporate incompetence, replacing experienced directors on the port company with inexperienced directors, and ruining the port along the lines that occurred in the financial sector. Was the Super City Council blindsided by a council-controlled organisation you had no control over, handpicked by Rodney Hyde to flog off our assets, and what does this secretive corporate structure bode for actual genuine local democracy?
I'm not going to comment on Mike Lee's outburst yesterday, but I think the bigger picture for me is that now, 18 months into the structure, we're realising the weaknesses, but also the strengths of the CCO structure. What I think we need to do is take the time and look at each CCO, which we've started to do, look at the way that council has the ability to influence and control. And in some ways, I'm probably a little bit more comfortable than I was a few months ago. There are some things we need to let our CCOs get on and do. You know, do we want to be making decisions about whether the new seats in the Aotea Centre are red or green? Of course we shouldn't. Do we want to be making decisions together with our CCO on the future of the Aotea Centre? Absolutely we do. So I think it's just retooling our ability to influence the big and critical decisions that our CCOs are making. At the moment it's one size fits all, and I think that's the problem.
Do you feel that you've been handed a bit of a poison chalice here? You had something that was put together specifically for the chop up and sell of assets.
Don't get me started. I have days. It's quite surreal. I mean, you know my view on the setting up of the Super City. I kind of marched and fought it with every breath in my body. Now I've ended up in the bizarre position of being an apologist for some of this. And you know, there are days where I would just love to kind of put my t-shirt back on and grab my protest sign and, you know, stomp out and tell people what's so wrong. But we are stuck with this, and we can sit and moan and protest, but we simply need to fix the bits that were cataclysmically wrong, and that's my job.
Phoebe, did the Ports of Auckland management bite off more than they could chew here? Did they mistakenly believe they would only face Munns and not Helen Kelly? And can the CTU chalk this up as a victory that's breathed life back into the union movement?
Well, I think there are other factors that are also breathing life into the union movement at the moment, and that you have AFCO, you have the rest time strikes, you have everything else that is going on in terms of industrial action. I do think that in some ways, I mean, I know Penny might disagree with this, but it would be better perhaps if the council could have a little bit more of a say in what's going on, because this is just so not good. It has been going on for so long. It is a 15% drop in profits for the ports. And the dispute, I don't think, is going to be resolved that easily. I think when Helen Kelly came in with the CTU, that you know, public relations, I think, got a lot better for Moons. I mean, they were up against two public relations companies on the front of the port, and the internal communications that they have as well. So they were really up against a machine. But I don't think that, even given the employment court decision and the workers returning to work, that we're going to see this resolved very quickly. I think this is going to drag out a little bit longer.
Is this about economics, or is it about ideology? Because there is a lot of commentary out there on the Ports of Auckland saying, look, the management here seem hell-bent on one direction, when you could look at the Productivity Commission. Rod Oram came out and said the problem here is the fees that the shipping lines are charging. That's the uncompetitive element with us. It's
so, you know, it's one of these things you can slice whichever way you want. You know, you can either blame productivity and the 12% or whatever, and you can slice it that way, or you can slice it ideologically. And I think there's an element of truth in both. I think absolutely there's ideology in the way the process was set up. My personal view is it was to achieve an outcome. And the productivity issue, you know, when you talk to the union, they're pretty supportive of increased productivity on the port. So we're not at odds there. There's, you know, I mean, cut to the chase, it's all about the collective, including the ability to still contract out. If you boil everything down, that's where it's got to. So I think there is an ideological
question to both of you, final one on this. Is the problem here that good faith bargaining is a process focus rather than outcome focus? Because all Ports of Auckland have to do is pretend to follow good faith rather than genuinely act in good faith, don't they? Is this a failing of legislation, that it needs to take into account the outcome, that's good faith?
I think that's a difficult one, because I guess comes around the issue of negotiating, and that is a process in itself. Although I don't think that Ports of Auckland have acted well in this. I mean, I think that the act of trying to blame everything on the union, well, they should have far better management than this, that does not let this blow out to this extent. And, you know, we have had the union going in there and saying that they have been feeling like they have had some positive negotiations, but we haven't really been hearing the same thing back from the Ports of Auckland. So I think this should have been managed far better.
Is it a problem too much focus on just the process or the outcome?
All I can say is we've instructed ACIL to require the port to act in genuine good faith.
Well, there we go. Thank you, panel. Moving on with issue 3 tonight. What is slower, the Privacy Commissioner in finding out about the largest breach of privacy in New Zealand history, or Treasury when working out our budget deficit? Phoebe, the Privacy Commissioner was only made aware of the largest privacy breach in New Zealand's history when the media rang her. Where will the ACC scandal end?
Oh, this is a hard one, isn't it? Well, I guess now that we've got the Auditor General commissioning an inquiry, I think that might put a stop to some of it. But watching it blow out over the last couple of weeks, I mean, I remember being on here, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, where I was saying, no, I think this is going to get much larger. And I mean, what's really interesting about this is that it's been fueled by the blogosphere. And, you know, now we have kind of, I mean, it's interesting too that we have Collins now facing off with Little and Mallard. So we've got whether Collins picks up on that defamation case, and that might blow out the scandal even longer, actually, because she's put legal attention on it. It'll be interesting to see.
Penny, Treasury were out by another $1.2 billion on our deficit. With government still not coming to terms with a global economic recession resistant to free market solutions, how can the Auckland Super City Council have any faith and the proposed limitations for you to raise rates to pay for the infrastructure central government won't when Treasury is so blinkered?
This just astounds us. It's the most extraordinary thing. You know, we are being hammered by whoever the Minister of Local Government is and who can keep up. You know, around transparency and accountability and managing our debt levels, and we're going, well, hang on, back at you. You know, how on earth can we be, or how on earth can we take the government seriously on this when we're required and produce a 10-year plan with our growth forecasts, with our debt forecasts, and with our rates forecast, absolutely transparent, there for everyone to see. The government hammer us about debt levels, and then when we say, well, this is infrastructure that's critically needed in the Auckland plan which you asked us to write, here's your share, and they go, oh no, I don't think so, we can't possibly do that, and then hammer us for increasing debt. There's just a kind of a Pythonesque element to that.
Let's wrap this show with the last word. Phoebe, your last word this week is?
My last word would be that I'm quite disappointed in John Key for not holding an inquiry into Afghanistan. I think that the lid has been blown on this, that it absolutely must be addressed. The other thing is that it will be interesting to watch David Carter in terms of how he manages the local government reform.
Yeah. Final word, Penny.
Local government reform, for God's sake, if the man's got any sense, he's going to leave alone the purpose of local government. It's quite clear that everyone's had a go at it. You know, let's reduce the testosterone and get on with the real job of local government.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Phoebe. Ladies and gentlemen, to my final word. From 2008, Treasury claimed we would get 1.5% growth, 2.3% growth, and then 3.2% growth. We actually got negative 1.1% growth, negative 0.4% growth, and negative 0.1% growth. Treasury have been out by as much as 3.1% of GDP as little as last year. The reason Treasury keep getting it wrong is because the free market meltdown is beyond the ideological paradigm. Treasury and this government are confronted by economic conditions created by the neoliberal deregulation they so slavishly worship, meaning neither have the intellectual capacity to look outside the free market paradigm. What we are getting from government is a mishmash of austerity cutbacks resting on future growth predictions that make Hoover's constant claim of prosperity just around the corner in the wake of the 1929 stock market collapse look pessimistic. The tax cuts for the wealthy that this government has borrowed for can't be afforded when we have to sell our assets off just to pay for education and health. We are amputating the ability to raise revenue so the wealthy can still afford their holidays in the south of France. John Key wants to defy economic gravity by wanting trickle up rather than trickle down. How very magnanimous of us. If you like tonight's show, please join our Citizen A Facebook site and connect with other like-minded new citizens, and follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter and Facebook page. Thanks for watching, whānau. Good night, Aotearoa.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.